The first time someone from the HOA told me they were going to cut the lock on my gate, they said it the way you might talk about trimming a hedge. Casual, routine, like the decision had already been made and my opinion was just background noise. And I remember thinking something strange in that moment. Not, are they really going to do that? But, so this is how people lose land. Not with bulldozers. Not with lawsuits. Just with confidence. My name is Ethan Carter, and the road behind that gate, the one everyone suddenly wanted to cross, was never meant to be important. It was just a narrow strip of gravel that ran behind my property. Nothing fancy. No streetlights. No sidewalks. Just dust, weeds, and tire tracks that faded into the trees. But that little road taught me something about power, and about people something I wish I'd understood a lot earlier. Because power doesn't always come with proof. Sometimes it just shows up with a clipboard and assumes nobody will question it. That morning started like most mornings. Cold air, coffee in my hand, the faint smell of wet gravel from the night before. I stepped outside to check the gate the way I always did, more out of habit than worry, and the metal latch made that small familiar click when I touched it. Then I heard heels on pavement. Sharp, deliberate. I looked up and saw her walking toward the gate from the sidewalk side. Blonde hair pulled tight, pressed khaki pants, boots so clean they looked out of place anywhere near gravel. Denise Hartley. I didn't know her name yet, but I learned it soon enough. She stopped just before the gravel began, lifted her phone, and I heard the tiny, recording tone. Beep. Hello, she said brightly. I'm with the HOA. She smiled through the bars of the gate like we were about to have a pleasant conversation. Open it. That was it. No explanation. No question. Just open it. The HOA needs to cross this road, she added, tapping the clipboard under her arm. I didn't step closer. Why? I asked. Community operations, she said smoothly. Maintenance, inspections, access. That word again. Access. I nodded slowly toward the metal sign bolted to the post beside the gate. Private side road. No HOA access. She glanced at it quickly and dismissed it with a small wave of her hand. That sign doesn't override the covenants. Maybe not, I said, but the county parcel map does. For the first time, her smile faltered. Sir, she said, a little sharper now, everyone here is in the HOA. I'm not. That stopped her. She blinked twice, like someone trying to reboot a computer. That's not possible. I pointed behind me toward my property. My land was never annexed into the association. That road sits inside my parcel. Her laugh came quick and thin. You don't understand how this works. And right there, that was the moment the whole thing started. Because she believed that. Not in a mean way. Not even in a malicious way. She believed it the way people believe gravity works. HOA says something, therefore it's true. We can cut the lock, she said finally, almost bored. We've done it before. I stared at her for a long second. The air felt colder after that sentence. If you cut that lock, I said calmly, that's property damage. No, she replied. It's compliance. It's trespass. She wrote something down on her clipboard. You'll receive a violation notice. Then she smiled again, that thin professional smile, and walked away. By Wednesday, the email started. Notice of violation. Obstructing community access. Failure to cooperate. Daily fines possible. You could almost hear the legal department clearing its throat behind every sentence. But there was one thing missing from every email. Proof. No easement. No annexation document. No county record. Just pressure. And pressure works surprisingly well on most people. That's how systems like that survive. Not through law, but through fatigue. Arguing takes energy. Paperwork takes time. Lawyers cost money. Most homeowners eventually decide unlocking the gate is easier. But that week, something strange kept happening. People kept showing up at the gate. First Denise, then contractors. Then, one afternoon, a white pickup truck rolled up carrying two men in reflective vests. One of them had bolt cutters. Denise stepped out behind them like a foreman inspecting a job site. You received the notice, she said. I did. Good, she replied. We're here to remove the obstruction. The contractor looked at me. Ma'am, we cutting it. I lifted my phone and started recording. Go ahead, I said. Denise frowned. Don't be dramatic. I'm not, I said. You're about to cut a lock on my property. She dialed someone. 5 minutes later, a sheriff's deputy rolled up the road. Now here's the interesting thing about authority. Real authority doesn't talk much. The deputy looked at the gate, the bolt cutters, the sign. Then he asked one question. Do you have documentation allowing the HOA to cross this road? Denise stiffened. It's within association boundaries. That's not what I asked. Silence. Do you have proof? He repeated. She didn't. The contractor slowly lowered the bolt cutters. And just like that, the first battle ended. But the war didn't. A week later, the HOA called an emergency meeting. The clubhouse was packed. Plastic chairs, burnt coffee, the hum of fluorescent lights overhead. Denise stood at the microphone. This homeowner, she said, pointing directly at me, is obstructing community operations. Heads turned. Whispers spread. Pressure filled the room. She lifted a sheet of paper. The board will vote tonight to authorize removal of the barrier. Barrier, not gate. Barrier. Language matters. I stood up slowly with a binder in my hand. Before you vote, I said, I have one question. Denise sighed. Make it quick. I placed my binder on the table and opened it. Show the annexation document. The room went quiet. I laid out the papers one by one. My deed. The county GIS parcel map. The recorded survey. Every line said the same thing. The HOA boundary stopped short of that road. Didn't touch it. Didn't cross it. Authority isn't a feeling, I said calmly. It's recorded. Denise laughed nervously. This is obviously part of the community. That's not a legal answer. But the board voted anyway. Authorized removal of the gate. Just like that. And honestly, that might have been the best thing that ever happened. Because 2 hours later, a board member named Calvin met me in a grocery store parking lot. He handed me a manila envelope. Inside were internal HOA documents, budget drafts, meeting notes, and one line highlighted in yellow. Access improvement, private side road connector. Connector. They weren't inspecting the road. They were planning to convert it. Use it as a service route. Contractors. Deliveries. Emergency vehicles. They weren't confused about ownership. They just assumed nobody would challenge them. And if they crossed it long enough, people would eventually believe it had always been shared. That was the real plan. Cross first. Prove later. The next HOA meeting was chaos. Neighbors arrived carrying printed budget pages, highlighted documents, questions, anger. Then someone unexpected walked through the door. County code enforcement. A quiet man in a county jacket holding a folder. He asked Denise the same question the deputy had asked. Do you have a recorded easement allowing the HOA to cross the private side road? Denise opened her mouth, closed it, looked at her attorney. He leaned close and whispered something that carried across the microphone. Stop talking. 15 minutes later, he returned to the microphone himself. Effective immediately, he said carefully. All enforcement actions regarding this property are suspended. The room erupted, not cheering, just the sound of a lie collapsing. 3 days later, I received the final email. Subject line, enforcement withdrawal. The HOA acknowledged that no recorded instrument granted them the right to cross the private side road. Fines rescinded. Violations withdrawn. No future attempts without a recorded easement. And later that evening, another message arrived. Denise Hartley had resigned from a board. Just like that. No speech. No explanation. Gone. That evening, I walked out to the gate again. The road looked exactly the same. Dust. Gravel. Quiet trees. Nothing about it seemed important. But I realized something standing there with the sunset on that steel sign. The road itself had never been the real fight. The real fight was the line. The invisible one that separates confidence from authority. People like Denise rely on a simple truth about human nature. Most people don't question power. But law doesn't run on confidence. It runs on records. I snapped a brand new lock onto the gate. The metal clicked shut, crisp and final. My neighbor Tom leaned on his fence watching. Well, he said with a low laugh, guess they couldn't get through. I looked down the gravel road one last time. They never could, I said, because in the end, The HOA didn't stop because they suddenly respected me. They stopped because they couldn't prove they belonged there. And proof is louder than power. Now I'm curious about something. If an HOA votes to take something that isn't theirs and nobody pushes back, does that make it authority? Or just organized trespassing? And if you were standing where I was that morning with bolt cutters on the other side of the gate, would you have unlocked it? Or fought back? I'd honestly like to hear what you think, and if you've ever had to defend a boundary like this yourself.